So now the basics about PMP. The full form of PMP is Project Management Professional. By this time you should be aware. And PMP is owned by PMI, Project Management Institute. It's a not-for-profit organization started in the US somewhere in 1969. It's such a world non-profit organization. It was started to propagate the best practices in project management. So while you are managing the projects, what are the best practices one has to adopt and adapt? That's what, in fact, PMI preaches about and propagates about. And PMP is a credential, and PMP certification, training and certification was started by PMI, as I told you, to propagate the best practices in project management, to increase the success rate of the projects. You know what is the success rate of projects across the globe in 2013? Anyone? What is the success rate of the projects? Raghavendra says 60%. Any more views? Ladies and gentlemen. 21% is the success rate of the projects across the globe, irrespective of the domains, because projects can be done in any domain. Projects can be done in construction domain, IT, electronics, electrical, chemical, whatnot. Anything under the sky, you can do the projects. 21% is the success rate of the projects. It means 79% of the projects are failures. Why 79% of the projects are failures? The reason being, they don't follow the best practices on managing the projects. If you follow the best practices, obviously the success rate of the projects will increase. So with a motto in mind to increase the success rate of the projects, PMI started this PMP credential certification actually. So they collated the best practices that are followed across the globe in various domains. So they collated the best practices that are followed in Dell. They collated the best practices that are followed in Microsoft, in L&T, across the world, across the globe, in various organizations. What are the best practices they follow? They collected all these best practices and they published this course called PMP. Normally, how do you know any practice, like how to do a project or how to manage a project? How do you know? Anyone? How do you know how to manage a project or how to do a project? Or any practice or any process? How do you come to know? Raghavendra or Parnita, Dikshit, anyone? How do you come to know about doing a process or doing a project or managing a project? Okay. When you work in some organization, you will come to know. Suppose you are working in HSBC. When you are working in HSBC, you will know the best practices or the practices what HSBC is following. But there may be many other best practices that are followed across the globe in various organizations. Best practices may be followed in Microsoft. Best practices followed maybe in Dell. Best practices followed in Oracle. How do you come to know about these best practices? One option is you have to work in all these organizations, which is humanly impossible. Then you will get the exposure. If you work in 20 companies, you will know the best practices what these 20 companies are following. But there may be many other hundreds of companies across you, around you. They may be following some best practices. So how do you get to know about them? One way is you have to work in all these organizations, as I told you before, which is humanly impossible. The other way is attend this PMP training. So if you undergo this PMP training, you will know the best practices that are followed across the globe. So what PMI has done is they collated the best practices that are followed across the globe, and they published this course called PMP. And PMP is one of the certifications which is globally respected and well recognized. In fact, it is the most coveted and most respected certification across the globe. And PMBOK, the guide, is a textbook which was released by PMP, against which this entire training happens, and even your certification examination also will happen against this book. So it's a guide, it's a textbook, you can say. So your entire training will be done against this textbook, and also your preparation also will happen based on the PMBOK. PMBOK stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge. It's popularly known as PMBOK or PMBOK. It's a project management body of knowledge. So the entire knowledge pertaining to project management, they collated these best practices as I told, and it's a frozen thought, I can say, like, no, the frozen thought. What is a frozen thought? Book is a frozen thought. The thoughts of the individuals are frozen in the form of a book. So PMBOK is a frozen thought on project management. Is it clear, or do you have any questions? I want this session to be interactive. Not only now, any sessions from Skill Logic will be very interactive. So I want these sessions to be interactive. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me and shoot me the questions. I'm more than happy to help you all. Right. And why PMP? This is a major question. Anyone put this question, right? What is it for me? What is it for me? Why should I do this? What are the benefits? Without benefits, no one will pursue anything. So what are the benefits PMP can impart to your career? To your official career as well as to your personal career. So if you are PMP certified or if you undergo this training, it helps you to become a better project manager because you will be knowing the best practices of managing the project. And as I told you, these best practices were procured from myriad projects across the globe. There are many projects that are happening across the globe and they collected these best practices. And if you know the best practices, obviously it increases the success rate of your project as you become more organized, isn't it? So the success rate of your projects will increase. The moment the success rate of your projects will increase, you will get the due recognition in your organization. Right? You get the remuneration benefits. There are various benefits the moment you get organized and the success rate of your projects will increase. And the moment you follow the best practices, it helps in minimizing the resource utilization. And it makes your projects cost effective. Maybe you are using 10 resources to do a project. If you follow the best practices, maybe with 6 resources, you can do the same project. Less number of resources, obviously, it will make your project cost effective. So you can use lesser resources and it makes your project cost effective. And it changes how others look at your abilities. Now, the moment you start using this terminology, the lingo related to the PMP in your day-to-day life, your manager will be shocked. What happened suddenly to Dikshit? What happened suddenly to Parnita? She's using the words like analogous estimation, parametric estimation, contingency reserve. The lingo that is used in day-to-day project management globally, if you start using it, people will start respecting you. And the moment the success rate of your projects increases, people will start respecting you. Your peers will respect you. Your reportees will respect you. Your managers will respect you. Your customer will respect you. And even when you have these meetings with the customers in and around, as you move up in the management ladder, you have a lot of customer interaction and with the higher management. So they will be using these terminologies invariably. So you will be already familiar with these terminologies and you can talk to them very confidently. The moment you use these terminologies, people will start respecting you. And these are the intrinsic benefits what PMP can impart. If you come to the extrinsic benefits, the materialistic benefits I'm talking about, to keep your job, one moment. To keep your job, to get promotion, or to get a new job, or hike in your current salary. In fact, 100% of ours, we are more concerned about this than this. Do you all agree? Yeah, there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong, right? So these are the extrinsic benefits, the materialistic benefits, like to keep your current job or to get promoted or to get a new job or to hike in your current salary. 22% is the salary difference between a PMP certified and a non-PMP certified person, given the same experience. Let us say Parnita is having 10 years experience, even I am having 10 years experience. She is PMP certified, I am non-PMP certified. So 22% will be the salary difference. It's an average salary difference I'm talking about across the globe, across the globe. So this is the salary difference between a PMP and non-PMP certified. So if you are PMP certified, your investment will you will get your investment in no time. So the return on investment will be very quick, right? You will be investing somewhere 40, 45,000 or 50,000, not more than that. So even if you get 10% or 50%, then what you are deserved to get to by virtue of your promotion, by virtue of your experience, still you are benefited. So these are the benefits of PMP, and these are the answers for the question, what is in it for me? Why should I do PMP? Right? Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? You can put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask the questions. Feel free to ask the questions. No? Wonderful. Right. And the exam eligibility, yeah, was Raghavendra asked me questions. Does PMP address both agile or waterfall process? No, PMP doesn't talk about the agile methodology. Agile is the latest development in project management, right? It's more of a traditional project management, normally which is more aligned to waterfall model. PMP is more aligned to waterfall model. It's not aligned much to agile. However, the iterations do happen even in traditional project management, but not to the way how it happens in agile, right? So both are different entities actually. Very slight overlap will be there, but more or less both are two different entities. Did I answer your question? Okay, right, Ravin. And the exam eligibility requirement, in order to take the examination, you have to suffice 3 prerequisites actually. So one, either you should be a graduate or you should be a high school diploma holder. High school diploma holder means polytechnic diploma, ITL diploma. Even they have the eligibility to take this PMP examination. Otherwise, any graduate is as eligibility to take the examination. This is the first prerequisite you have to suffice. And 35 contact hours, the training, the contact hours, what skill logic will be imparting you. They are the authorized body, accredited body to impart you this PMP certification, participation certificate, which is mandatory. Training is mandatory to take this PMP examination. So 35 hours of training, we call it as contact hours, and 3 years of experience is required, project experience is required in the last 8 years. You need not have all this 3 years experience at a stretch. In a span of 8 years, you may have some intermittent gaps, but still you will be eligible. You may have some breaks. You work in a project for 1 year, after that 6 months you are on bench or you are jobless, doesn't matter. So in a span of last 8 years, you should be part of the project in a way or the other. You need not work as a project manager, remember. You should be part of the project. You should be part of project execution or project planning or project closing or project monitoring and controlling or project initiation. Any of these stages, you should be part of it. So overall, we can say in a nutshell, like 3 years of experience in the last 8 years, project experience in the last 8 years is mandatory. So these 3 prerequisites are mandatory. And however, if you are a diploma holder, 5 years experience is required. 6 months, 60 months, that is 5 years within the last 8 years. I will come to your question, Parnita. Does BA analyst work? Are you part of some project when you do the business analysis? I know that you do the customer interaction. You will be interfacing the customer and the development team. But are you part of these project activities? Are you providing some inputs towards planning the projects? Are you monitoring whether the execution is doing well or not? If you are part of it, yes, you will have the eligibility. Then you have the eligibility. And the examination pattern, most interesting part and most difficult part as well, right? PMP examination, very popular PMP examination. You'll have a total 200 questions, all multiple choice, ABCD, 4 hours duration. And out of this 200, 25 are considered as pre-test questions or dummy questions, we can say. And only 175 are scored for the examination result. But you never know which of these 25 are dummy questions or pre-test questions. These are embedded within these 200. So all 200 questions, you should think it's your cup of tea. And you have to answer. Right? And once you submit the examination after 4 hours, you will be disclosed whether you pass or fail. You will not be disclosed what is the percentage you have attained. Pass or fail. If you pass or fail, whatever, it gives you the grades like proficient, moderately proficient, below proficient. Like in school, we used to have the grades, right? Grade A, grade B, grade C, right? Grade C doesn't mean that you have failed. So similarly, below proficient doesn't mean that you have flunked the exam. You have passed the exam, but you are below proficient, right? What is the benchmark for this below proficient? No one knows. Whether it is 60%, 50% or 70%, no one knows. PMI doesn't disclose the marks what you get, right? And what is the pass mark also PMI doesn't disclose. But over experience, 61% is what assumed to be the pass mark. Though it's not an official figure, it's an unofficial figure. Normally people interpret like now 61% should be the pass mark. Yeah, so I had a question from someone, Raghavendra, should we submit any letter to PMI stating that I am part of project management activities for the last 3 years? Unless you have been asked to do so, you need not submit any proofs. 10% of the applications will be selected for audit randomly. If your application is selected for audit, then they will ask you to submit these proofs. The first proof is your graduation certificate, the original degree certificate. You have to take the photostat of it. The second, the 35 contact hours, the certificate which is issued by SkillLogic to you. And the third, your experience stating that in so and so project I have worked, and you have to take a signature from the project manager then, and you have to submit all these physical evidences. You have to send through courier to PMI USA. That happens only with 10% of the applications. And one good news was my application was selected that time when I applied for PMP. So I submitted all the proofs, right? So it's only a formality. It's not a serious thing. You can you can submit all the evidences or the proofs to PMI. Did I answer your question, Raghavendra? You can unmute. See, typing is a bit tedious. You can unmute and you can talk so that we can quickly finish off this. Yeah. And how the questions are distributed. If you see, there are 5 process groups as per PMI. Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. You will be doing some activities as part of project management or as a project manager related to initiating the project. I mean, the project just kicks off. It's an initiating stage. So during that stage, you will be doing certain management activities like developing the project charter, identifying the stakeholders, certain management activities you do. That's called initiating. And once the project initiates, then you do a detailed planning of the project and you develop the project management plan. The detailed project management, you develop a detailed plan, which is very, very important. You have to plan religiously and meticulously. Once you plan it, then you have to execute it. Most difficult part, right? We also in real life, personal life, we make many plans that from today onwards. Just a moment, gentlemen. So once you do the planning, the next part is executing the plan, which is very, very difficult actually. No, so this is where we fail. Even in your personal life also, I'm telling you that we make great plans. Like from tomorrow morning 5 o'clock I have to wake up, from 5 to 6 gym, I have to improve my fitness, 6 to 7 yoga, 7 to 8 karate, kung fu. We make great plans, but we wake up at 8 o'clock, no, or 9 o'clock. Sorry. So we make great plans, but execution will go for a toss. We get up at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And then the most important part as a project manager is you have to monitor whether the execution is going as per the plan or not. This is very, very important. That's one of the primary responsibilities of the project manager, that you have to check if your execution is going as per the plan or not. That is called monitoring. If your execution is not going as per the plan, what you have to do? You have to control. You have to control. Let us say you planned that you have to finish 10 activities, but you have executed only 8 activities. Then how do you know that you are not done well? When you do the monitoring, you will know it. And then you have to control. When there is a variance between what you planned and what it has been executed, obviously you have to control the situation. So that is called monitoring and controlling. And then closing. Even while you are closing the project, you have to do some management activities. In real time, it so happens, the moment customer accepts the deliverable, project managers assume the project is closed. They start celebrating. So customer agreed, accepted the deliverables. We are happy, we are done. No. Even during closing, there are certain activities, management activities you have to do. Like if there are any claims to be settled to the vendors, because as a part of project, you do a lot of procurement. You will be buying some licenses, you will be buying some hardware, software. If you are into construction, you will be buying some cement, you will be buying some sand. So it's a lot of procurements you will be doing. You will be buying some products, you will be buying some services from outside. So all the claims has to be settled, and you have to archive all the documentation so that this documentation or artifacts will help as a ready reckoner for the future generations to do the reference. So in the future, if any other project manager, he wants to refer your project as a baseline, he can very much do it. So, and as well, you will be documenting the lessons learned. Once the project is closed, you will document the lessons learned. Never hire Ram Tawa in your project. That's a lesson learned for you. You will document it so that the similar mistakes will not be recorded or repeated in the future. So you will be doing some activities pertaining to closing as well. So these are the 5 process groups what we have in PMP. What are the 5 process groups? Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. From initiating, you will get 13% of questions. It's the percentage of the questions. 13% of 200 is 26. So out of 200, I told we have total 200 questions. You remember? So 13% of 200 is 26. 26 questions you get from initiating. 48% you get from planning. 60 questions you get from executing, because I'm saying 30%. 30% of 200. 50 questions you get from monitoring and controlling. 16 questions you get from closing. These are the tentative ballpark estimates, plus or minus 1 or 2%. The questions may change. So overall, this is the distribution of questions according to the process groups. We call each entity is called a process group. So what are the 5 process groups you have? Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Just a moment. So the entire syllabus, if you see, it is divided into 5 process groups. I told what are those 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. And we have 10 knowledge areas. So the entire syllabus is divided into 10 knowledge areas. You can say 10 chapters. And the entire syllabus is divided into 47 processes. It means the entire syllabus is made up of 47 processes. These 47 processes, they sit into any of these 10 chapters, and these 47 processes may belong to any of these 5 process groups. See, out of these 47, 2 we have in initiating, 2 processes we have in closing. The rest are distributed among planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling. So PMP is all about knowing about this 47 process. What do you mean by 47 process? You do 47 different types of management activities. Process is nothing but set of activities, isn't it? For example, let us take ATM money withdrawal process. What do you mean by process? Money withdrawal process from ATM. We have different steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That becomes the money withdrawal process. What is step 1? Insert the card. Step 2, give the username and password. Step 3, select the language. Step 4, activity 4, enter the amount. It is nothing but ATM withdrawal process. Similarly, you have 47 process. It means 47 different types of management activities you do as part of project management. So 47 process we have in total, and these 47 processes are registered in these 10 chapters called knowledge areas. And these 47 processes may belong to either initiating or planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, or closing. Is it clear, gentlemen? Ladies and gentlemen, please. I'll give you 10 seconds time. If you have any doubts, please unmute and ask me, or you can put in the chat. Raghavendra, Lakshmi Prabha. Okay. Wonderful. So the first chapter, total we have 11 chapters in this entire PMP. The first chapter is Project Management Framework. It talks about the basics of project management. Project Management Framework talks about the basics of project management. Then we will be deep diving into the project management concepts, and that we have around say 10 chapters we have, right? Total 11 chapters. So I'll be showing you. See, these are the 10 knowledge areas which I told you. Apart from project management framework, which I showed you before, we have 10 chapters. We call them as knowledge areas: integration management, scope management, time management, cost management, quality management, human resource management, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. These are the 10 chapters which we'll be reading, and apart from that we have a 1 chapter called project management framework. Now quickly let us try to understand some basics related to project management or project, right? Then I will tell you the modalities on how this training happens, what you'll be getting, what is the key takeaway from this training, and what are the logistics or the material that will be given, other things. So I told project management framework talks about the basics. What is a project? This is the most basic thing. What is a project? We use this project, the word project, very liberally, but what is the technical definition of a project? Now let us see that. Very important for the examination. You will get at least 2 questions, 2 to 3 questions based on this definition. Using the context of this definition, you will be given some scenarios and you have to answer the question. Don't expect same question 2-3 times it will appear. It will never happen. The context will be taken. And remember, this training will take 2 perspectives. One, you will be gaining a lot of knowledge related to project management as I tell you, as I keep explaining you the concepts, right? So all my real-time experience, I will quote you a lot of real-time examples which will give you some insight in understanding the concepts. And the second perspective is the examination perspective. So what is important for the examination, where you get more questions, which topic will be touch based more in the examination, I'll be keep on asserting as throughout the training, and you have to make a note of it so you can better focus on those, right? So your passing will become a cakewalk, right? So this definition is very, very important in the examination perspective. Now what is a project? A project is a temporary endeavor. Endeavor means attempt. So it's a temporary attempt, it seems. What do you mean by temporary? Temporary doesn't mean it's a short stinted or short lived. Temporary means which has a start date and end date. A project always has a start date and end date. Should have a start date and end date. Anything which doesn't have an end date is not a project. Sometimes if you take government projects, for example, they have only start dates, no end dates. You will never know when government projects complete. Yeah, no end date for government projects. So they are not technically, they are not projects, right? So the first characteristic of a project is always temporary in nature. It means a project should have a start date and end date. Temporary means it should have a start date and end date. Start date and end date. This is the first characteristic. Done. And why do you do this project? You undertake a project to create a unique product, service, or result. By doing a project, you will be creating a product, or you will be creating a service, or you will be creating a result. Let us say you are a project manager in Apple. You are developing a new mobile model in Apple, right? Say S6 or S8, I don't know what are the mobile models you have in Apple, S6 or S8. So you are developing a new mobile. So the outcome of this project is a product. You are developing a new mobile. It's a product. So the outcome of a project can be a product. Sometimes the outcome of a project can be a result. Let us take your pulse polio project, polio drops. Yeah, polio drops project. I think you are all aware, right? Polio drops project. What is the outcome of this polio drops project? It is a result they are looking at. Polio free India, like how they eradicated smallpox. Some 30 years back, smallpox was eradicated from the world, not only from India. Right? That time they took it up as a project. Now polio drops also, they want to eradicate, they want to have a polio free India. So they are talking about a result. They are looking at a result by doing this project. Here you don't have any product. You are looking for a result. Right? Sometimes you create a service. Creating a service is a project. For example, let us say in your organization there is no email. Even now, all the employees are writing on a piece of paper and putting in the post box to communicate and collaborate with the users. Now you want to introduce email service in your company. So the entire setup of this email service, like designing the architecture, designing the process, designing the entire email system and building that email system, you will take it up as a project. Here you are creating email service. Remember, providing service is not a project. Creating a service is a project. Providing a service is operations or manufacturing, you can say. Creating a service is a project. For example, let us say you are a project manager in Coca-Cola. That's what I am coming. Why should it be unique? I am coming to that. And product, service, or result. So the second one is, the second characteristic is a project. The outcome of a project should be product, service, or result. The first one is it should be temporary in nature. That is, it should have a start date and end date. And product, service, or result. The outcome should be this. And the outcome should be always unique in nature. Same repeat result if you are getting, or product you are getting, it is not a project. Let us say you are a project manager in Coca-Cola. Okay. You are developing orange flavor in Coca-Cola. Till now that orange flavor is not existing. You took it up as a project. You are doing some research and development. And you developed orange flavor, Coca-Cola orange flavor. It's unique. Till now it's not existing in the world. First time you developed that, right? Once it is developed, you take it up as a project. And once it is developed, it moves into operations or manufacturing. In manufacturing, they produce millions of bottles of Coca-Cola orange flavor. Then it is more of a recurring result. Same repeat product you are producing. That is not a project. That's called operations or manufacturing. If the result or product is repetitive in nature, if the same product is coming repetitively, then it's not a project. Normally we say, I'm in operations project. Operations is not a project. We use that. But honestly, operations is not a project. There you do more of a repetitive work, resetting the password, taking backups, doing maintenance. These are all routine activities, the same mundane activities you will be doing, right? So the outcome of a project should be always unique in nature. The word unique is very, very, very important. Similarly, you are a project manager in Apple. You developed a new mobile model, S8. So when you develop for the first time, it becomes a project. But once it is developed, they put into manufacturing, and thousands of these mobiles will be manufactured. That's not a project. That's manufacturing or operations. So these are the three characteristics of a project. The first one is project should be always temporary in nature. It means it should have a start date and end date. And the outcome of a project should be always unique in nature. And the outcome can be a product, service, or result. This is the definition of a project. Is it clear? Is it clear, ladies and gentlemen, please? Wonderful. And now let us quickly discuss about project constraints. Can anyone tell what is a constraint? Forget about project constraint. What is the meaning of constraint? Anyone? What is a constraint?
The difficulties that we face while we are on project or ongoing project or in the initial stages of this project.
Okay. Yes, Lakshmi Prabha. It is the perfect word I am looking at actually. It's a limitation. The limitation. So, any limitation which hinders the progress of your project is called a constraint. Anything which is hindering the progress of your project. For example, you want to reach to your office. Your son or daughter is stopping you. Oh no, don't go to office. You are late to office. Your manager will ask. My son is a constraint towards reaching this office in time. So there are certain constraints which will hinder the progress of your project. What are those constraints? Scope, quality, schedule, budget, resources, risks. These are the 6 constraints what you have in the project. Budget is a constraint. When you are not given sufficient money, does it not hinder the progress of your project? Does it not limit the progress of your project? Yes. A $10 million project you have been asked to do in 8 million. 8 million. And so insufficient budgets can be a constraint. So budget is a constraint. Sometimes schedule is a constraint. You are not given sufficient time scales. A 6 months project you have been asked to complete in 4 months. Acting Prime Minister Sonia Gandhi is coming. Yeah. So you have to finish the project in time. In 4 months you have to complete it. 6 month project. So you will tell they have given me sufficient money, but the main constraint is schedule. They are not given me sufficient time. So sometimes schedule is a constraint. Sometimes scope is a constraint. When scope is a constraint, what do you mean by scope? Scope is the work what you are doing in the project. Typically the work what you are going to do in the project. If you are constructing a house, if that is the project, scope is construction. If you are developing an application in software, scope changed. You are developing a new medicine for diabetes, you are doing that R&D project, scope change. Scope is typically the work what you are doing in the project. So when you are not aware about the work what you are supposed to do, then scope is a constraint. It's a first of its kind. It's a state of the art. You never dealt with such a technology before. Then scope is a constraint. Or sometimes customer will not give the requirements completely. He will not disclose the scope, what exactly he wants in the project. So suppose you appointed me as a project manager for your house construction. So I came to you. You said, Ram, I am looking at a duplex house. Okay, duplex house, what else? I will tell you tomorrow. But the tomorrow never comes. Then what I will say, I don't know what to do. The work is not completely disclosed. So sometimes scope is a constraint. Right? Quality is a constraint. The quality expectations sometimes will be so high that it becomes a constraint. So quality is a constraint. Suppose you're doing a project of developing a robo which conducts open heart surgery. A robo which conducts open heart surgery. What should be the quality of that project? What should be the quality of that output? Robo? Very high. You are playing with human lives. You are not building a website that even if there are some bugs, even if it is done, it's fine. But a robo which is conducting open heart surgery, if the quality is not good, you're gone. So the quality expectations will be so high that you will be feeling bad, like you will be telling your friends, they gave the I know the scope, I know the schedule, they've given me sufficient schedule and budgets, but the quality expectations are so high that it has become a constraint for me. Or they are not given what are the quality requirements. Customer has not disclosed what are the expectations related to quality. Then it becomes a constraint. What level of quality I should give? I don't have any idea. Then it becomes a constraint. Resources are constraints. Sometimes you don't get people. I'm not getting .NET developers. I'm not getting big data Hadoop developers. Right? Resources, or I'm not getting the material. I'm not getting the software. Resources are constraints. Sometimes risks are constraints. Too many risks in a project. Too many risks. Suppose you are launching a satellite in Sriharikota. Very uncertain. Too many risks. Very risky project. You never know whether it will succeed or not. So too many risks. Lot of uncertainties. Then even then it's called a constraint. So these are called the project constraints. Out of the 6, 3 constraints are very, very important, and they are inevitable and they are obvious. What are those? Scope, schedule, and budget. These 3 will be omnipresent in most of the projects, right? Scope, schedule, budget. These are the 3 constraints we have. These are very important constraints in almost all the projects we have. These are called triple constraints. They are popularly called as triple constraints. They are known as triple constraints. Very famous in project management circles. So customer will ask, have you addressed triple constraints? Or your manager may ask, have you looked into triple constraints? So the moment they say triple constraints, it means they're talking about scope, schedule, and budget. And this is called iron triangle. This is called iron triangle. They so deeply impact each other. It's called iron triangle. And one of the characteristics of a project is they impact each other. For example, if you increase the scope, I mean the work what you are supposed to do, instead of 100 items you are doing another items customer added. Scope is increased. The work what you have to do is increased. It will impact the schedule. If the schedule is impacted, the budget will be impacted. They impact each other. They impact each other. This is one of the characteristics of the constraints. Even if scope is increased, quality may be impacted, schedule may be impacted, budget may be impacted, your resources utilization may increase, and your resources may be demotivated. Suddenly there is an increase in work. Yeah? Suppose you are washing, as a husband, you are washing clothes in your house. So when you are washing and when you are about to finish, your wife gave another 20 clothes to wash. Will you don't demotivate? You will get demotivated, right? So when the scope is increased, the resources will be demotivated, and the scope increase may lead to risks increase also, increase in risks, right? So they impact each other. So scope, schedule, and budget, they are called triple constraints, and this triangle is called iron triangle. So these are the basics of project management which I discussed, and now let me tell you how this training will happen and what are the various facilities you get as part of the training, which is very, very important. See, training you get in any institute, but the value add what you get, it makes the difference. I'm not saying other institutes won't give it, but what Skill Logic is giving, what are the facilities they are providing. So let me tell you those. One minute. Number one, e-learning access will be provided. E-learning access will be provided. The entire end-to-end project management videos, entire PMP course videos are available, right? High quality videos are available. So e-learning videos will be provided for around 6 months, I believe. So e-learning videos will be provided. So what is the benefit of these e-learning videos? You can access this training as per your convenience, whenever you want, right? As per your convenience, because you have to do a lot of recap and you have to revise the concepts many times, because you will be dealing with many concepts. So it's almost next to impossible that you remember all these concepts when you attend the class for the first time. So you can go and access these e-learning videos. They have a state-of-the-art LMS system, learning management system. Username and password will be provided to you. You can go and access for the next 6 months. 1800 practice questions are made available to you. These mock tests or practice questions are very, very important to clear the examination. Knowing theoretical concepts is different, but applying this theory in a given context, in a given situation is different. So 1800 practice questions will be provided. It's again online quiz. Practice tests will be provided. So you can practice these questions, which will be really helpful for you to get prepared for the examination. Out of this 1800, 3 into 200 sets simulated exam questions, simulated exam will be provided. I told in the PMP exam you have 200 questions, right? So 3 sets of 200 at par with the original PMP standard, right? If you get 70% in this exam, you can go and take the original PMP examination. That's what we observed. Who gained 70% in this practice test, simulated exam, everyone cleared the PMP examination. So it acts as a benchmark for you. It will give you some sense of confidence. Okay, my preparation is sufficient. Normally people will be baffled whether my preparation is sufficient or whether I have to read more and more. How do you know that? So it acts as a litmus test for you. Yes, my preparation is sufficient, right? And real-time project management templates will be given and will be discussed as part of the training. I don't think too many training companies are doing this, which will be really helpful. Normally, as part of training, we'll say we use project management plan. We use risk register. But how the risk register looks like, no one knows. So what Skill Logic has done is, they have developed these templates. So, for example, let us say project scope statement. There's a document called project scope statement we use in the projects. How project scope statement looks like. So they developed this template. So when we see this template, you'll have a better view, better idea, like how this project management template looks like. What happened? It's not opening. So these are all the templates what we discuss as part of the training. Not only this, we have many. Like, sorry. Under closing, these are the templates we use. Lessons learned document, project closeout document, project audit guide, so procurement audit guide. So you have different types of thing like risk register. So how a risk register looks like, this is how it looks like in a real time. So these templates will be provided to you, and these templates will be shown to you as part of the training. So a risk register, this is how it looks like in a real time world. I mean, slight changes may be there if at all you are using in your own company, but this is a template how it's look like. So what you have a risk statement, you will give a probability of the risk, impact, score, revised probability, who is the responsible person, what actions you take, what is the status of it, comments. This will be really, really helpful for you. Instead of assuming how it looks like, If you see with your own eyes, it will be very good. And you can download these templates from their website. Right? In the LMS system where you take quizzes and you watch videos, these templates can be downloaded. And the hand holding will be done till the time you clear the examination. It's not that you attend the training and after that the wash of the hands. Till the time you get certified, the hand holding will be. Anytime if you have any doubt, you can walk to their office, you can get their doubts clarified, or online you can connect with a trainer like this, and you can they will do the hand holding till the time you are certified, right? So they take the entire responsibility till the time you get certified. Right? So these are the things, and if it is a classroom training, it's a 4 days training. If it is an online training, it's every day 2 hours like this. It will happen for 15 days. Sorry, it's not 2 days, 2 hours. My bad. Yeah. 2 hours for 15 days. Right. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to help. Please unmute yourself. I see most of your voice, if not everyone's voice is very sweet. So I'm glad to hear. Yeah? Please unmute yourself. Raghavendra asked, after the training, usually what's the average time taken to prepare? 120 hours of preparation is normally what I suggest. 120 hours of preparation. If you are preparing 3 hours a day, maybe 40 days it will take them. 40 days. If you are preparing 2 hours a day, 60 days. So usually I suggest 120 hours of preparation. Lakshmi Prabha, do you have any questions, please? Which fees are you talking about? Training fee or the examination fee? No, they don't issue the PMP voucher. The training doesn't include the PMP voucher. Training is separate. In fact, the training course I'm not aware. I'm a trainer. So commercials you can discuss with the business guys, like the sales guys who has approached you. And normally the examination cost will be around close somewhere around. It's a ballpark estimate. I'm telling $530 around $530, including membership. And this you will be paying to PMI. SkillLogic doesn't play any role. You have to fill the application. You have to pay it online to them. And the SkillLogic only charge this training fee. Yeah, and one more thing, what SkillLogic is offering, they are giving MS Project training free of cost along with this. I'm not sure if this month it is there or not, but January I remember MS Project free training is there. Normally MS Project itself it costs around 8 to 10,000. I'm not sure in this month there's an offer or not. I just told you, but you can ask them. Like MS Project training is provided free of cost. This includes both PMP and MS Project. This is a question mark. Don't take it for granted. It's a question mark. Any more questions? Training Lakshmi Prabha, I mean, I think it costs somewhere around 13,000-14,000. I'm not sure that you have to talk to the sales guys. I'm not sure. I'm not the right person to answer that. Parnita, any more questions? Raghavendra, Lakshmi Prabha? Nothing? You're welcome, Raghavendra. Yeah. Right, then. Bye for now. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending this. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.